Hey everyone, it's Kat. So every year or so, I get this really strong pull towards the Traveler's Notebook. It's like a seed in hibernation that erupts, and usually I dive into this rabbit hole of YouTube videos where people are using the Traveler's Notebook as a travel journal, especially where they use it as a travel journal for Japan in particular. But this time, for some reason, I've become obsessed with this sort of paleontologist, explorer, light academia, adventurer, canvas and hemp and brass instruments aesthetic. It sounds a bit vague, but it all started when I saw this phenomenal YouTube video about what's hiding in melting glaciers by Aidin Robbins. It's a 30-minute video full of the most amazing storytelling, explorer aesthetic, and in the video he has all this footage of old explorer maps and scientific studies and articles, and it firstly reminded me of the National Geographic magazines that my old science teachers in high school used to have piled up in the back of the classroom, and they told us that we could take them home, and I always took the ones about history, Amazonian lost tribes, early human ancestors, etc. And I sort of left the ones about astronomy or genetics or mathematics behind. But anyway, in Aidin's video, he talks about how early explorers in the Arctic, Siberia, and Yakuts in the late 1700s discovered mammoths for the first time. And they would load these like half-frozen carcasses back to St. Petersburg. And these discoveries of these real-life mammoths developed the field of paleontology and also the theory of natural selection at the time. But what interested me was really how these people, these explorers back in the olden days, how did they make sense of all these like strange, undocumented discoveries? How did they document it, so write it down themselves, and then communicate it back home to that narrow traditional world that didn't have any idea of what these new discoveries might be? So I went into this online rabbit hole where I tried to figure out where in particular this European old-timey adventurer, explorer, like burlap sack brass telescope aesthetic that I kept seeing in online pictures, where this came from. And I traced it back to a particular time period. It's called, I think, the Scientific Revolution and the European Age of Discovery, which took place in the 16th and 17th centuries. And so this was a period of time where explorers were sailing into unknown waters, and they started to create scientific societies. So the Royal Society of London, for example, was created at this time, and they would publish scientific papers on their new discoveries. And the Royal Society's motto is actually, take nobody's word for it. So everything had to be based on science and hard evidence. So they would bring botanists, zoologists, and naturalists on these expeditions, and they would take down notes on the biology, the flora and fauna of the new land. Geologists would come along to write about the rocks, and map makers as well would use their advancements in navigation and knowledge of geography to take down the longitude and latitude to create maps from nothing. So basically, there is no reference. They're literally charting the uncharted coastlines and major land masses of our world. I thought these scientific societies funded these expeditions, but apparently most of them were actually privately organized. And later in the 19th century, the British government would begin to fund some of these surveys and expeditions. So these explorers took expedition notes on their discoveries, but how did they bring back a piece of this new world back into the old world? So I became really interested in this question, and I happen to own this book. It's called Petra and the Holy Land, and I bought this in a gift store near the entrance to the canyon that leads you into Petra when I visited Jordan a few years ago. And it's a beautiful, beautiful book by David Roberts. So David Roberts was an artist who went on tours in the Near East, and he drew these beautiful paintings of Jerusalem and Petra at the time that he visited, which was, I think, around the 17th century. So this is an example of what he saw. This is the Church of the Transfiguration. So this is in Petra itself, where they carved buildings right into the stone of the canyons. this is more paintings of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, I think that's how it's pronounced. And you can see how gorgeous the colors are of these banners and like the scale in relation to the people down here of how big this church was, and the domed roof and the beautiful architecture, the chandeliers in this particular one, and the richness of like the red drapery. And also it's so fascinating to see what people were wearing at the time, all the colors, the patterns, like the little overcoats, the style of the waistbands, the pants as well. He saw these amazing, like fascinating places and architectures and people and clothing and food and colors and cultures that nobody back home, back in Europe, would have typically had the chance to see. And so for the people who couldn't travel to the Near East themselves, and the ones who couldn't physically attend the art exhibitions, how did the wider public get to see what he saw? And so he had his paintings reproduced in something called lithograph. So we all know how the printing press sort of revolutionized printmaking, and you could have books and stories and essays mass produced. But that's fairly easy because the alphabet is only 26 letters, and you can just mix and match those letters to create any number of texts. But what about paintings? What about images? How about color? Like, how do you commercialize this and reproduce it in a large scale for so many people? That's where lithograms come into the picture. And according to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, a lithograph is where you draw an image on a flat stone with special ink, and then you treat it so that the ink only sticks to the drawing and not the rest of the stone. And then so paper is pressed onto the stone to make the print. And for colored prints, you had to use different plates to press each color into the paper. So it's sort of mind-boggling to think about how much time and effort it would have taken to create these. What I find so special is that the sheer act of trying to share a new discovery or to communicate how beautiful and majestic this whole other world is, it requires so much effort and so much logistics. I feel like that endeavor itself is just really, really beautiful. So I'm thinking of setting up my own expedition notes in my Passport Traveler's Notebook. And I feel like this is the perfect medium because of the interchangeable notebooks that you can have within Traveler's Notebook leather-bound cover. And what I need now is just an archiving system, a sort of logging or index system to make sure that my expedition notes are sort of different to a typical journal. So I Googled online how a typical expedition notebook should be. The Utah Historical Society website says that there should be sections for descriptions, interpretations, and reflections. And the difference from a normal journal would be sort of the depth of description of the physical setting and how organized your notes are. The Society gives a template on the website. And I also looked at some examples of expedition articles on the Nat Geo website. So my Passport Traveler's Notebook is currently being used already as a journal / catch-all for my thoughts and reflections. And this is a Midori MD blank notebook that I cut down to size. I'm thinking of keeping this, but adding the expedition as like a separate part to this. And I was thinking of using the latest edition of Field Notes, which are these drawings of North American birds by Rex Brasher. And I feel like it's such a perfect notebook for this endeavor because Rex himself is also an artist who was dissatisfied with the printing options of his time, and he decided to hand color like hundreds of copies of his books on birds of North America. And he was just so dedicated to expressing what he captured to like a larger audience. So I'm thinking of using these. I haven't opened these yet. I have about 6 of these, so they should definitely last me for however long my obsession with like expedition notes should last. I think I will use this one first. It's got such a nice like thick cardstock feeling. And field notes themselves are already so perfect for doing any sort of expedition on the go logging on site. They have like these pertinent coordinates, internal records, etc. here. one of my favorite books, and who I would consider to be a great example of a modern day explorer, actually also used field notes. This book, Underland by Robert Macfarlane, is just so incredible. He basically documents his journeys into all these fantastic different landscapes. So he goes down into like starless rivers, he goes into the catacombs of Paris, Greenlandic glaciers, a remote cave art site, etc. And throughout all his journeys, he's apparently using field notes. So I discovered a article on the Penguin website talking about this, and he used about more than 20 notebooks to write this book. And the end result, this book is like a work of art, honestly. I highly recommend this book. But if I could even be a fraction as amazing as he is, I hope these field notes would like help me become that. The one thing I do want to note is that this edition seems to be lined. I think I would prefer square graph paper or dot paper, but these will do. I also bought from Muji these sticky index tabs, and they're in a sort of like folder index shape, and yeah, I found them really, really cute. And the yellow color I think really suits this sort of aesthetic that I'm going for. So field notes are slightly bigger than Traveler's Notebook passport size. As you can see, they're slightly taller, but I'm thinking of attaching it by using this craft folder. So I saw this hack online where if you take the rubber band, attach it to the craft folder on one end, and then the middle of your other notebook on the other end. I should be able to open this section up and slot in my field notes to one of the page holders here. There shouldn't be too much overhang. Oh, there's a little bit actually. And then I'm thinking maybe I'll stamp the date onto this tab section here, 17th of November, and it fits perfectly. So I'm thinking something like this might work out well. I might still play around a bit more with how exactly I structure it. So what should be on the sticky note versus what should be on the rest of the page. Having the sticky note to mark out each day could be really special. And yeah, that just looks really stinking adorable. I'm thinking of buying the field notes archival box for myself for Christmas so that I can have, a whole row of these stacked up once I'm finished with them. So yeah, thank you for watching this video. I've tend to get into rabbit holes like this and become really fixated on a particular aesthetic and want to know where it came from. And the thing is, they usually don't last that long. So we'll see how long I stick to making these expedition notes. But for now, it's a really cute idea, and I think I'll keep it up at least for the next week or so. Okay, I've had a bit of a change of heart actually. I chose this notebook instead of the other one with the red birds just because it's summertime here. This is just so beautiful and orange, and I think it's like better suited to the season right now. I've also taken out the craft paper folder from before, and I've just directly attached the field notes to the other MD notebook, and it does close a lot better, and there's not so much overhang on the top. Some other changes I was thinking of making was removing some of my charms and giving my notebook a bit of a makeover. I feel like using this as a sort of like expedition notebook doesn't really require all these accessories. The charms are really cute, like almost like lucky charms and talismans for when I'm writing down like my deepest thoughts and feelings, but taking this everywhere as like a expedition notebook that's meant to be used in the field, I feel like it would sort of detract from the aesthetic that I'm going for. Don't worry, I will use these again, I'm sure, at some point. But not having any charms at all, it's been a while since my notebook hasn't had any charms. I've also brought along this leather Hobonichi pen holder, which also acts as a closure. I'm thinking maybe I could use this. I know it's for the Hobonichi weeks, but if I put it to the maximum capacity here, it should be able to close for a passport-sized notebook as well. And the benefit of this would be that I can have 2 pens in here without using the pen holder. There's a little bit of a stretch, but it's not too bad. It's not too bad, but I feel like the leather is sort of clashing. Like this camel is a bit too bright for the brown colorway of my traveler's notebook. What do you think? Let me put some pens on. And another pen I would use would probably be this Uniball pen, because it's got so many different colors, which would be really great to use for any sort of taking expedition notes or coloring in. I also need to find a way to keep the set of index tabs with me in my notebook. Maybe if I used washi tape and stuck the tabs down on the last page of my other notebook, that could work. So I think that works well. It would just cause a bit of a bump if I start writing on sort of this side of the page. Actually, it doesn't feel too bad. And the second thing I wanted to include was the 2025 calendar provided by Field Notes. And I'm thinking I'll note down, like cross out the days each day as I go along. Awesome. So I think that's my expedition journal itself complete. I have the tabs here that I can rip off and use as I go by every single day. And then the front part of this journal is still my, I guess, deep thoughts journal and some notes that I'm writing down for therapy. I think I'll bring the brass tab along because the Field Notes doesn't really lie open. It is a stapled notebook, and some of the pages have some trouble lying flat alone. So I'll just keep this on the back of the notebook like that. And then I'm honestly thinking of not even putting in the elastic for my traveler's notebook and using this Hobonichi pen holder instead. I think it just depends on, as I'm using it, is it annoying to take it on and off like this? And finally, I just have a few more of these Midori brass clips that I will use throughout my field notes. Maybe just for some important entries. Awesome, perfect. I mean, this is looking really, really cute. And I can't wait to give an update on how I'm using my revamped traveler's notebook. And thanks for watching today's video. I actually spent a lot of time researching for this video, and I hope you enjoyed some of the research that I dug up. And I know it's a bit of a nerdy topic to go into, but I thought it was really fascinating, and I hope you thought it was interesting too. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video. Bye.